everybody, and thanks for joining us today. What we wanted to do today is to share a little bit of background information about this new web resource that PRI has been developing starting 2 years ago, but really a much more concerted effort beginning in the fall of last year to develop our Earth at Home website. And sort of the underlying philosophy for Earth at Home is that it's going to be a one-stop shop for earth science materials, really to help people get the background that they need to both teach about the Earth and learn more about the Earth. And one of our foundational principles is that Earth at Home is open access. It's free for anybody to use, and most of the materials on Earth at Home have Creative Commons licensing. That goes for the text, that goes for most of the images, and so it's really supposed to be sort of an open and free resource for you to use in your classrooms or wherever as you see fit. So what we're going to do here today is I want to start us off by talking sort of broadly about some of the different resources on Earth at Home, and then we're going to dial in and focus in on resources sort of specific to the Southeastern United States. I'd encourage you to follow along if you wish, or explore Earth at Home on your own. What we're going to do here is kind of talk about Earth at Home for a half hour or so. And then what we want to do is carve out a bit of time for you to, explore Earth at Home on your own, and then we can come back and sort of discuss some of the things that you found on Earth at Home that you think might be useful for yourself and students and what have you who you work with. And then we can kind of compare ideas about what folks find useful about Earth at Home, as well as we'd love to get feedback on what we might add or change to make Earth at Home more useful for you. So again, please do feel free to follow along. I'm going to be scrolling through some pages pretty quickly, but of course I encourage you to go back and take a look at those pages. As we go through this, we'll be adding the links to the chat so that to help you kind of follow along as we go through. One of the other things that I wanted to mention before we get too far here is at the bottom of every single Earth at Home page, there's a subscribe box. And so if you want to receive email updates about the newest additions to Earth at Home, please add your email address to that box. We promise not to spam you. You'll probably get updates no more frequent than about once a month or thereabouts as major new additions are made to Earth at Home. We'd like to highlight those for you. So if you're interested in receiving those, please do subscribe. So everything that I'm going to share with you here over the next few minutes is accessible from the top level menu of the Earth at Home website. And this same banner with all these drop downs and navigation appears on every single page on Earth at Home. So you can kind of find your way back to where you started pretty easily. So there are several main parts of Earth at Home that I want to highlight. There are regional guides to earth science, and we're going to spend some time digging in on those here in a little while. But first, what I wanted to introduce are a few other resources related to Earth at Home, including our digital encyclopedia, some quick guides and FAQs that we've developed, as well as some resources that we call virtual science. These are sort of virtual online toolkits for your classroom. So we'll dig into those a little bit. Let's start out here first by going to the digital encyclopedia. So the digital encyclopedia is a place to come to for background information about earth science. And this is very much under development. Eventually what we'd like this to become is sort of a full-fledged online open access textbook about not only geology, but earth science more broadly. We do have some chapters online now, as well as a bunch of sort of introductory vignettes that will eventually be expanded into full chapters as time goes on. To sort of show you the main topics that we're looking at developing. We're going to have chapters about earth system science, chapters about sort of the fundamentals of geology, you know, minerals, rocks, how the world works, plate tectonics, hazards that are sort of a consequence of plate tectonics and that sort of thing. Overviews of geologic time and Earth history. We already have actually very detailed overviews of fossils, paleontology, and evolution that we developed as part of our digital atlas of ancient life project. And we're not going to spend time talking about those here today, but I explore you if you wish to, you know, click on the digital encyclopedia of ancient life. And that's a fairly well-developed online textbook at this point, covering many, but certainly not all areas of paleontology. And we also have a lot of content that's being developed related to climate change, and also energy. And I'll highlight one of those new resources here in just a moment. So going back up to the top here, just to kind of show you what this is all about, I wanted to highlight the minerals chapter of the digital encyclopedia of Earth science, you know, to just sort of give you an idea of what's here. One of the things that we do in the full-fledged you know, digital encyclopedia chapters is we provide PowerPoint files as well as zip files showing all the images that appear on the pages. So if you find that the content is useful to use in your classroom, all you have to do is just click the button and you'll be able to download all the images in one place. So this introductory page about minerals, you know, just sort of covers the basics that many of us talk about when we cover minerals with our students, you know, sort of starting at the basic level of, how minerals are of course, like everything, composed of atoms and elements, and, you know, how atoms and elements fit together ultimately to create mineral structure. And then we go over some of the basics of mineral identification. And, you know, one of the things that we've tried to do wherever possible in the digital encyclopedia of Earth science, as well as that other digital encyclopedia of ancient life, is to incorporate things like interactive 3D models that are fun to explore, and, you know, certainly not as good as the real thing, but kind of the next best thing in an online environment. We've also incorporated lots of videos that just show, you know, basic things like streak tests that one might use to try to identify a mineral specimen. So that's just an example of, you know, what we're kind of covering with respect to minerals. I'm going to go back now to that landing page for the digital encyclopedia, and we can look at some of the other resources there. One of the resources that we've developed very, very recently are Earth Science Quick Facts.
John, I think maybe your page is paused because we're just seeing the homepage.
Thanks for letting me know. Let's see here. I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm going to stop sharing and start resharing. I apologize, everyone. Let's try that again.
Now we're in business. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I apologize, and please do interrupt again if that happens again. I'm not sure why that happened. So one of the other things that we've developed recently are what we call Earth Science Quick Fact pages that highlight, you know, some of the basic factoids about Earth science associated with each state in the United States, and we've just finished wrapping up this collection of pages for the Southeastern United States. So we've got a bunch of pages that we've developed that characterizes, you know, the official state fossils, rocks, minerals, gems, highest and lowest points of elevation in each state, as well as some new geologic maps that we've generated. Let's see, does anybody have a state they'd like to look at in the Southeast? We've got Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and so on. Any requests? Not, I will pick Virginia.
There's a Georgia request.
There's a Georgia request. Great. Let's check out Georgia. Okay, so for Georgia, the first thing that appears on every one of these pages, and I'll show you another way to get to these resources here in a second, are geologic maps. So we've been creating new geologic maps for using GIS software for every state in the country. And these are developed to be relatively simple maps that aren't too busy, that sort of quickly communicate information about the geologic ages of rocks at the surface or just below the surface of the ground. So in all these maps, Cenozoic aged rocks are yellow, Mesozoic are shades of green, and Paleozoic are shades of blue. It's a little difficult to distinguish the different the different ages, but we want maps that quickly communicate to folks roughly how age, at least to era different rock units are on the maps. And that was one of the motivations of making these. Lots of times geologic maps are very complicated, and a lot of the maps that are available online do have a lot of detail that sometimes makes them difficult to use in classroom settings. So again, we're making new maps for all 50 states, and all of these maps have Creative Commons licensing, so please do feel free to use them as you wish. So the official state fossil of Georgia is a shark's tooth. The species isn't specified, but Georgia, of course, has lots of Cenozoic and I believe some Cretaceous shark's teeth. As far as I've been able to figure out, Georgia does not yet have a state rock, so it'd be great for folks in Georgia to come up with a state rock. The state mineral is staurolite, this mineral that sort of forms these little crisscrossing shapes. The state gem of Georgia is quartz. Here's a variety of quartz. Of course, it's amethyst. It's colored purple. And then the highest and lowest elevations in Georgia. The highest elevation is Brasstown Bald, and then the lowest elevation, of course, is the Atlantic coast. And then we've listed a few places to visit: Fernbake, the Tellus Science Museum, and Brasstown Bald. We'd love suggestions. If you live in Georgia and you have some suggestions of cool places that the public can go to learn more about, the earth science of Georgia, either museums or places to go visit, please do let us know, and we'd be happy to add more to these listings. And then we have links at the bottom to additional resources, and this is connected to our regional guide series that you'll hear more about here in just a second. So I'm going to attempt to go back again and hope the page doesn't lock up. Somebody let me know if it does. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All righty. We've also developed a new geologic timescale page for Earth at Home. I'm going to click that here. So most of you are probably somewhat familiar with the geologic timescale. What we've done on this page, though, is we've taken the timescale and we've divided it up time period by time period, and we've highlighted for folks some of the major events that happened in Earth history during each one of these intervals. So just as an example, of course, during the Quaternary period, that's when numerous species of megafauna went extinct. It's also the time when our genus Homo evolved. In terms of Earth history, Northern Hemisphere glaciation started at this time. One of the things that we've done in association with this geologic timescale is we've created maps showing where rocks of particular ages can be found, which I think is useful for classroom presentation. So if I scroll down here, just an example, of Mesozoic aged rocks. The Mesozoic, of course, is the age of dinosaurs. So if you're having a conversation with your students about, where could you go to potentially find dinosaur remains, you might show a map like this. I grew up in Wisconsin. I was told there's no dinosaurs in Wisconsin, no matter how deep you might dig in your backyard. It's because rocks of that age are not preserved there. So you'd need to go to some of these places where Mesozoic age rocks are actually found. So we've created maps you can explore on your own for each major division of the geologic timescale for the lower 48 states. Okay, I'm going to go back to that digital encyclopedia page just to look at one last thing. I mentioned that we've been also developing a lot of new content related to climate change, and energy. And some of this content is being ported over from our PRI's Teacher-Friendly Guide to Climate Change, which, if I remember right, was published in 2017. So we're taking some of that content and updating it and adding it to Earth at Home. And one of the pages that our colleague Ingrid Zabel has recently added is on climate change mitigation. So this is another one of these sort of detailed chapters with multiple pages. I'm going to click on mitigation strategies. And this is a page that just went live a couple days ago that our colleague Ingrid developed, that's got a lot of great information on it, just about different strategies for climate change mitigation and ideas for things that people can do to make a difference. So again, I encourage you to explore that on your own. I'm going to go back up here again to the very top of the Earth at Home banner. So we've been in the digital encyclopedia. What I'd like to do now is very briefly highlight our quick guides and FAQs. This is a page that you can go to get very quick introductions to different earth science topics. If you don't have time to read, a long page about or a long chapter, with a lot of details about topics like rocks, you can click on these links, and it'll lead you to just very short and very accessible introductions to these topics. So we also have, introduction to plate tectonics, quick guides to common fossils, earth hazards, climate. Here's that, the earth science quick facts that I already shared with you related to, official state rocks and minerals and that sort of thing. Further down on the page, we have answers to frequently asked questions. This is sort of a random assortment, but we're hoping it's going to grow over time. These are questions that we find show up on internet searches, and so we're trying to answer some of these questions that people have. One of the most recent of these that we've added has been the question, how did the Grand Canyon form? So right now we're working on developing earth science resources related to the Southwestern United States. So we wanted to, add a page answering this, a common question that folks have who visit the Grand Canyon back and briefly mention. So either Don or Rob, you want to say a bit about that? I'm going to stop sharing.
About sort of the overview, and then I can talk a little bit about the catalog.
The virtual fieldwork, first off, I'll note one of the ideas of virtual fieldwork is not to replace actual fieldwork, but rather to serve as a catalyst for it, to get people interested in going out. And there are a lot of resources generally on the value of fieldwork and how to go about making these resources on your own. We think that one really powerful approach for using virtual fieldworks is to engage students in creating them alongside with you. And that sort of forces students to go outside and turns the problem on its head of technology keeping kids and adults inside, and instead gets them going outside with their technology to capture aspects of the environment that they can share with others. And I'll just note there's tools and tips on that, and links to lots of resources for helping to make these things in various ways and supporting them. This, for example, was taken with an app called Google Street View, which you're probably familiar with. Street View in Google Maps. Well, you can make those yourself with your phone. It's very simple to do, and a free app once you've got once you've got a smartphone and a data plan, and lots of other resources listed there. And I'll also just briefly point you to the, oops, I meant to go back to the VFE homepage. There's a story, a VFE vignette for thinking about why to do this, and telling a story of what it might look like in your classroom. And now I'll hand it over to Rob and stop sharing myself.
Okay. I will my screen. So you'll notice that in the VFE section of Earth at Home, there are these gold bars that each take you to a different section of the site. Don talked about the pages that explain the rationale behind doing virtual field work and making them, and the role that they play in science education. We also have a couple of pages devoted to virtual field experiences that you can use with examples that you can actually use in your classroom before you've made one yourself. So for example, if I were to click on these case examples, you'll see a few examples in the table of contents here. Shale Hills is a place in Pennsylvania. There are none right now for the Southeast in our case examples, but that could change. A couple in California and one in Denver. And so the idea here is that we're highlighting in each of these a way to create and use virtual field experiences. So you can use them, but you can also directly, but you can also see them as examples of things that you could do for yourself. And as Don mentioned, most of the technology we use is low cost software and hardware that you may be able to get for yourself, or you may even already have. I'm going to go now. So there are these highlighted VFEs, but there's also a VFE catalog. The highlighted VFEs includes just 4 examples, but the catalog includes dozens. And there are 2 categories. The first is a map of VFEs that have been created by teachers associated with PRI workshops. And these are not necessarily polished VFEs, but here's a map of them. You will notice that we actually don't have any from the Southeast for a strange historical contingency that has to do with our funding. We received funding from the National Science Foundation to create them for basically the states in the western 2/3 of the country. And we had some already for the Northeast. So we're actually, that is the next place that we want to make some, and we're in the process of making one for Mississippi right now at the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary. There is also a list of VFEs state by state. And so there isn't a map of these yet. A map would be, we may eventually create one, but there are lots and lots of them on here. So it might be a little full. But anyway, you can look for your state and then click on any one of these. So there are a number from the Southeast. And the examples come from a wide variety of individuals and organizations, some of whom are educators and made these for activities. Some of them are really more like kind of picture shows, which are not necessarily educational by themselves, but you can use them as the basis for something more educational. So we would just invite you to look through and see what's useful, but we would also ask if you know of something from your area, or maybe you've even created something, we would like to know about it so we could add it to this list. And I will stop sharing and hand it back to John.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Don. I'm going to share my screen here again. All right. Again, under virtual science, so Rob and Don were just talking about virtual fieldwork. I want to highlight virtual collections really, really quickly. So even before the pandemic, PRI started using a process called photogrammetry to create 3D models, kind of like that sample of amethyst that I showed you earlier, for specimens in our collections. And we've created over 600 3D models of fossils and rock and mineral samples from PRI's research collections as well as our teaching collections. And so I just want to highlight that these exist. So just as an example, we could go under, arthropods. Let's see if we can find a quick trilobite model. Here's trilobites. These are all sort of arranged like virtual drawers of specimens that an instructor might put up on, or bring out on a lab bench during a classroom activity. And you've seen we've bounced off to our another PRI website here called the Digital Atlas of Ancient Life. That's where the fossil models are stored. I can bring up this Flexicallimini from Ohio, this little trilobite. If you haven't used these before in the classroom, I think they're kind of fun to work with. You can click the full screen mode here at the bottom, and it brings them up to full screen size. And these are really useful for sharing features of fossils with your students. I don't teach much anymore, but when I used to, I'd be in front of a lecture room, and I'd hold up a little specimen in my hand, and students in the back of the room wouldn't be able to see it. So this is I think a useful way of sort of highlighting, the features of fossils, either when you don't have the real thing on hand, or if it's just not practical for whatever reason to be able to pass specimens around in the classroom. So again, I'm going to just go back here. We've created, again, over 600 of these models, both of fossils and rock and mineral samples from PRI's collection. So I encourage you to explore that resource. So what I want to do now, so we've talked about the digital encyclopedia, we've talked about quick guides and FAQs, we've talked about virtual science. What I want to do now is focus on regional guides. I'm going to click this link here at the top. We are creating a series of regional guides to the earth science of particular places. And one of our goals here is to, show every person who lives in the United States, no matter where they live, that there's something really cool beneath their feet. The earth has a story to tell, really, no matter where you're at in the world, as well as within the United States. This part of the Earth at Home project, I want to acknowledge, is being developed with an IMLS, an Institute of Museum and Library Sciences grant that PRI received last year. So it's supporting the development of these regional guides to earth science. These regional guides, in turn, are being built upon the foundation that Rob and Don and their colleagues in the education department at PRI developed in the form of the Teacher-Friendly Guides to Earth Science series. Rob, do you want to say a few brief words about the Teacher-Friendly Guide series? Some of the folks on this call may be familiar with these books that PRI's published.
Yeah, sure. I will put a link in where you can see these books. So the original idea many years ago, as John said, was to make it easier to teach about local and regional earth science in the classroom, knowing that earth science teachers are busy people who don't have time to go into the research literature looking for the details of the geology of their area. Lots of states and museums have created individual resources for maybe a part of a state, sometimes a whole state, but often missing kind of the regional context. So we decided it would be useful to create a series of books for each region of the country. And we thought, it's not that that previous people may have thought of such a thing, but how do you develop a business model around that? But as a natural history museum, we were, I think, maybe the right people to take that on. And so we, over the span of many years, got a number of private grants, private foundation grants, and then a big grant from the National Science Foundation to put together these books. Each of them is laid out in a similar way, similar content, or similar chapter headings, but of course, tailored to the local and regional geology of those individual places. And then we went and found a team of writers, many of whom were specialists in those particular places. And they wrote the bulk of these, and then we added them to them and put them together into these books. So the books are available also for free. You can download a PDF. The one from the Southeast, I think, was published around 2016, maybe. However, what John and Liz have been doing is a big improvement, honestly. The book is nice. You can download it. You have a PDF. You can flip through it. But it's, because of all of the limitations of publishing and so on, it's not nearly as visually rich, and it's in some respects not as up to date as what's on Earth at Home now. So, but just so that you know that these exist, and a little by little, we're moving across the country on Earth at Home, and eventually all of the guides will be moved into these much more visually rich, interactive resources on Earth at Home. Back to you, John.
That's great. Thank you, Rob. Yeah. So as Rob mentioned, we're starting to port over this content and sort of build on it and add to it, focusing on, seven different regions of the United States. And so we've sort of carved out regions sort of based on how they were carved out in the teacher-friendly guide series. So we began with the Southeastern United States, and we'll dive into that here in just a second. We recently finished the South Central United States. Liz and I are currently working on developing content for the Southwestern United States, and that should be done hopefully later this month. And so we're just sort of moving in a clockwise fashion around the United States. So we'll finish up with the Northeast sometime later in the fall, we hope. That's the goal, at least. So let's dig into the Southeastern United States. And Liz is going to introduce a couple of pages for the Southeast in particular, but I wanted to just note that the way that all of these regional guides are structured is sort of the same. There are some topics that are broad, and they relate to the entire region. So we have pages associated with the geologic history of the Southeastern United States, the climate of the Southeastern United States, and then earth hazards associated with the Southeastern United States. And then what we've done is we've sort of focused in on other topics at a narrower scale. So topics like rocks, fossils, topography, energy, and mineral resources, we focused in on at what we call the physiographic province. I'm going to scroll back up to this map at the top. So if we look at the Southeastern United States, there are sort of three main physiographic provinces, and a physiographic province is sort of defined by a combination of both its geologic history and its modern day topography. And those things are often, as most of you know, are commonly linked. They tend to have an association with one another. And so that sort of is the basis for these subdivisions. So with that said, Liz, would you like to introduce the geologic history page and the fossils of the coastal plain region? And I will stop sharing here.
Okay, let's see if I can get my screen to share properly. All right, we'll see how it goes. Let's see. So does that look good?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So I'm going to be sharing, I guess, 2 pages. First of them is Geologic History of the Southeastern United States. So as John said, there are pages covering a number of different topics for the Southeastern US, and in each region of the United States will be similar. We'll be covering sort of the same sort of topics. So geologic history, climate, mineral resources, energy, all those things. Some of them are covered at the whole region scale, and some of them are covered at the physiographic region scale. So in each section of the United States that we are working on, geologic history will be covered at the whole region scale. So in terms of how we translated the book to the web version of Earth at Home, basically the layout of the text has to be a little bit different. So we've added a lot of subheadings and things to help with page navigation. And we've, done a little bit of editing here and there. And in some cases, we may have done some additions or updates to the text depending on what was needed. In the case of the geologic history sections, generally speaking, there aren't a lot of updates to the text because not a lot has changed since these things were written. And Southeast in particular actually has a fairly complex geologic history because, of course, early on, it's very tectonically active, and then later on becomes a passive margin. So the other thing that we've tried to do with Earth at Home, as opposed to the earlier books, is just update the visuals. Because this is web, we don't have to worry about fitting everything onto the printed page and how long the book is going to be or something like that. And I think, as John mentioned before, we've been trying to mostly use images that are under Creative Commons or public domain licensing. So some of the images do come from the books. For example, I think this image here of the Grenville Mountains comes from the book. So in some cases, we've added color to these and maybe done some updates on the labeling or something. And others are things that we pulled off the web. So this is a book image. These pictures we pulled off the web, and they have Creative Commons licensing. So we have some explanations of what you're looking at. In this case, gneiss, Precambrian gneiss from the Southeast. So geologic history just kind of gives a whole overview that can tie the other sections together. And like I said, quite a bit of Southeast geologic history, the interesting stuff happens in the Precambrian and Paleozoic. So for Southeast, this is quite long. We do have some global maps with labels on them, another updated picture from the teacher-friendly guide. And this one goes on for quite a while. So there's a lot to learn about the Southeastern US. And I just don't know, let's see if there's anything in particular to point out. We do have a little bit on the formation of the Mississippi embayment, how it gets up here into Tennessee and Kentucky. And this comes up a little bit in the geologic history of section 2 as well, as the formation of the Florida platform and things like that. So this goes through the history in quite a bit of detail. Yeah, so that's geologic history. Fossils are covered at the physiographic region size. So there's coastal plain fossils, Blue Ridge and Piedmont, and then inland basin fossils. Fossils of the coastal plain is the richest section from this area, and there's quite a bit of Cenozoic, and a bit of Cretaceous as well. And I guess one sort of random Paleozoic fossil there for anyone that likes trilobites. So as I mentioned, we're trying to upgrade the images here. Some of these come from other PRI websites. So for instance, this image of the Cretaceous Western Interior Seaway, if you look at any of the geologic history pages on Earth at Home that we've made so far, this pops up again and again, just because it's a big part of the geologic history of North America. But we do have these nice updated images of shells. So in this case, these two come from Wikipedia, these Cretaceous shells. We've taken things from actual scientific papers. So these shark teeth are from a Creative Commons licensed paper. And in some cases, we do have some reconstructions. So this mosasaur, if you look at the jaw, it's kind of cool. It's got weird teeth on it. but it's hard to imagine what the whole creature looks like. So we get these nice reconstructions in here as well. So the coastal plain goes mainly through the Mesozoic and then through the Cenozoic. Some of these are original images that were created for the teacher-friendly guides. So PRI is very rich in terms of its collections and fossils from the Southeast. This is something that paleontologists at our institution tend to fossil on. So there are quite a few shell collections from the Southeast and lots of examples of those. Some things come from PRI affiliated websites as well. So this is another thing from Neogene Atlas of Ancient Life, which is a website that's also run by PRI and has a lot of nice pictures from this region as well. Some examples of shell pits. These were taken, I think, by John. So the whole point here was just to sort of, as Rob said, enrich the visual aspect of this. So there are a lot of really nice high quality color pictures. And if you want even better quality, a lot of these. So we've kind of optimized them to a certain size so they load well on the web. But in a lot of cases, we have links to the original source. So you can go in if you want an even higher quality version of the picture and download that yourself to use in your teaching. So also in terms of this page, one of the things that was updated a bit was the section on marine mammals. There are a lot of interesting early whale fossils that happen to come from the Southeast. Unfortunately, a lot of them are fairly fragmentary, but there are some of these nice sort of four-legged ancestral whales. So that was one of the cool parts of working on this page, and a nice 3D model. This comes from the Charleston Museum, a part of a skull of Tupelo-cetus, which is one of these early whales, and it's got labels on it. So the web also does allow us to embed these videos and 3D models as well, right into the page. So that kind of, I guess, gives an overview of what this is like, and there's some updated plant content too. Yeah. So John?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that stuff, Liz. So I think what we wanted to do next is to give all of you, 10 minutes or thereabouts to kind of explore Earth at Home if you like, and just kind of look through some pages, and then we can come back and discuss some of the things you found, some of the things you didn't find, and hope to find. If you're wondering what in particular you might look for, we'd like to hear maybe what are some resources that you have seen already in this presentation or in your own explorations of Earth at Home that you might use in your own classrooms. We'd love to hear about that. And or maybe you'd like to share something interesting about the earth science of the place where you live, and let us know whether you found any coverage of that topic on Earth at Home, or if there's not any content, what you'd like to see us develop in the future. Don, Rob, any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'll just say, so it's 5:20 right now, so take, let's say 5 minutes and just go and explore your state. If you're either in the Southeast or South Central regions, those are the regions that are fully fleshed out. And if you're not in one of those regions, then pretend you live there, or go to a state you're interested in looking at, and poke around and see what you see. And in 5 minutes, we'll just come back and hear what folks found interesting.
And sometimes this happens in breakout groups. We're not doing breakout groups, right?
Yeah, I think it's a small enough group that
yeah. So we'll just be here.
Yeah.
So feel free to interact with us, and so it doesn't have to be a quiet space, but you're welcome to just kind of look around and but ask questions or chat in the meantime.
Right, and it's 5:21, so we'll go till 5:26, and then we'll ask you to share something. To have fun.
If you are wondering how to get back to the home page of the Southeast, I'm putting that link in the chat.
I should put on music.
One thing I'll add is folks are looking for resources on Earth at Home is the search bar works sort of amazingly well. And I oftentimes search bars don't work that well on websites, but for reasons that are beyond me. And the search bar seems to, whatever we've plugged in, seems to really do a good job. So if you're looking for something in particular, feel free to type it into the search bar at the top, and it'll bring up, every page on Earth at Home's website where that search term is present.
Did you see Marley's comment in the chat, John?
Yeah, I was going to look into that.
Yeah, it seems like they've got to be in there someplace, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, it's a great suggestion for an addition for us to make, because it certainly is a very well-known fossil locality. I do see a couple pings of, there's a 3D model of Terra Trigonia, which is the state fossil of Tennessee, which seems to be from the Coon Creek Formation. So it's looks like it's Cretaceous in age.
Okay, it's 5:26. So let's hear what folks have been poking around on. Anyone want to share? Should we call on somebody? I'm pretty good at wait time. You are also shy.
So to remind you, a couple things, just to, like, you can say anything, but one thing that we'd be interested in hearing about is how you think, if you think you might use this resource in your teaching, what do you think is the most useful thing about it? That's useful to hear because it helps us to think about as we move on to the next regions or even this region, what should we expand upon? But also, what's missing? Did you go to your state and find, wait a second, where's my local geology?
So maybe it is big enough for us to go into breakout groups and force people to talk if they're not going to talk in this group. How about if we do go into breakout groups for 5 minutes and we'll have you share things in 5 minutes.
And that'll help us to get to know you a little bit as well.
Right. So
Maybe we can.
It is. Hello, sir. I am very puzzled. I don't know what you got going on. Hold on just a second. Let me get you. Oops. Oof. Welcome back. And I think there's people still popping in. So let's just go around and hear one thought from each of the three breakout groups to start. So room one was Araya, Carol, Eric, John, and Marley. So someone want to share from room one what you were talking about?
Yeah, Carol or Marley, would you like to share some of the comments you made?
Go ahead, Carol.
Carol, I think you're muted.
Yep.
We were just pointing out our different uses from elementary through grad school in terms of using the images and animations and models. That's all.
How about a thought from room two, which was Christy, David, Liz, and Rob?
Our conversation was really all over the place, but Christy and David both had lots to say. Do you want to? We didn't only talk about the Southeast, but you want to say anything? We have a thought.
I just mentioned that there's a lot of information on here about energy resources and the climate change, and the community that I work in Southeastern Kentucky is kind of in a transitionary period between a coal extractive. Historically, you know, our communities have been very related to that, and in the past, those topics have been difficult to broach because of the economic interest of the companies in the area. So it's nice to have those topics all here and then linked to interrelated topics to make those conversations and transitions more just easier to have with students.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's hear from room three, which was Debbie, Michael, and Tyler. Yes.
Hi, this is Mike. I am actually not a teacher or a non-professional in paleontology. I'm actually a retired pharmaceutical researcher with about a 15-year-long interest in paleontology and geology. So I do a lot of reading on it. I bought a couple of the regional guides from the Paleontological Institute. So I found my first browsing through the site excellent, because from a non-professional point of view, the visuals were just bringing complex ideas were excellent. So I can't say enough about it from someone who's not a professional, doesn't have a formal educational background. It's just excellent. I was looking. I'm from the Northeast, Massachusetts, but we've been in Florida for the last few months. So I was just out of interest looking at the Southeast and Florida. And you see the big picture. I was wondering if you could focus in, and maybe I need to look a little more. Say you wanted to be interested in Florida alone or Massachusetts alone. And I know it's part of a bigger picture, but it's nice to see the progression within the state that you're in. And I don't know if I saw that, or maybe need to look a little further.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we found that sort of carving this up is difficult, because if you just focus on a state, the sort of natural boundaries don't always follow the political boundaries, and I think that sort of is one of the challenges.
Okay.
I think as time goes on, what we're hoping to do, sort of this first pass of Earth at Home, is to get this sort of framework content online for the entire country. And then what we'll do is we'll sort of start adding, we'll start sprinkling additional detail that's sort of much more focused at the state level throughout the website. So for example, right now, Florida is just sort of considered within the coastal plain physiographic province, but over time we'll start adding, sort of more vignettes focused on different aspects of the earth science of Florida. Is just sort of an example. So we're sort of trying to build the framework here in the first pass, and then we'll start developing we'll start adding content to a greater level of detail in the future. That's kind of our plan right now.
Well, anyway, as I said, I found the pictures, the graphics excellent, and it does look like Florida was probably underwater for massive amounts of time,
A
and that's
long
why there's a
time.
lot of limestone here and limestone type sand, so.
Yeah, the picture behind me here is a picture that I actually took in December of 2021. That's a shell pit in Florida. So I do my research on mollusk shells from
Yeah.
Florida and elsewhere. And these are basically ground up to make road base. At this
Yeah.
particular quarry, this material is being quarried out to build the bed for a high-speed train, between Miami and Orlando that's going to go in the future. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I have to break for some company coming. I hope you don't
Yeah.
mind a non-professional
no.
attending these.
Oh, no, thank you for attending.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
And if there's anything I can add or talk to you in the future, I'd love to be involved with some of the research or whatever you do. So,
That's wonderful. Thanks very much.
all right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes to go yet. Another question, sort of general, is there are people teaching at a variety of levels here, and of course that makes it that's a challenge to do a broadly applicable resource. I know there are some middle school folks, at least, who registered. I'm not sure if they're actually in the session or not, but I'm wondering if we've targeted it, if it's a resource that works for middle school teachers or elementary teachers, or if you can figure out how to adapt it to your setting. And again, greeted by silence.
Yeah, it's a topic that came up in our breakout group. One of the things we're trying to do with Earth at Home is to try to make it applicable to many different audiences. Teachers, people, students, folks at all sorts of different levels. We think some of the content is probably appropriate at an appropriate level for, say, college students taking their very first class in earth science, but we're hoping that other aspects might be useful even in a elementary school classroom. So, for instance, those pages that I highlighted, related to quick facts about individual states, we're hoping will appeal to younger kids, who are sort of just more interested in the factoids. What's the state fossil? What's the state rock? What's the highest place? That sort of thing. So any suggestions that you might have about, content that could be added or tailored to the group of students who you work with would certainly be welcome.
What else do you need from us is another question.
Yeah, think about resources that you've looked for before, especially online, for your own classrooms and had a hard time finding it. Maybe there's some way that we can help. Are there resources like that?
Quiet group. It is a day on a Thursday. So I will note on a different note that we did put some upcoming events at the bottom of the agenda. One of those is next Thursday. We have a twice a month program called Science in the Pub. And next week we'll have Vandana Singh talking about storytelling and climate change education. And she's an awesome speaker, a physics professor and science fiction author, among other things. The link is there in the agenda. And we just finalized today that we're doing a workshop on climate change anxiety on Monday, May 2nd, and that info is there too. Glad to talk about whatever and stick around and talk about the resources. And I think Rob is going to stick in There he is, putting in a question for our little exit survey. And like I said, glad to stick around and answer any questions and talk more about the full suite of resources. Earth at Home is gigantic, so there are tons of things there that we can explore if you want to ask individual questions of us.
So yeah.
And
Oh, sorry, Jen.
oh, I was just going to add in as well, if you have, if you think of comments later or questions that you have for us, please email us. There's a link at the bottom of every single Earth at Home page, including the home page that says contact us, and there's a little email link. And so just click on that and it'll send you to a good email address to use, where we'll make sure we see your message.
Yes, and the agenda has all of our email addresses as well.
Yes, that's right. So the agenda will continue to exist. So if you need to go back to it, you think, oh yeah, I forgot, where's that link? You know, I mean, if you have if you keep the link to the agenda, then you'll have the other links as well. And and John just put in an email address for Earth at Home generally. And then the exit survey is very short, so it'll just take you a minute or two. So if you could do that, we would be deeply grateful. And thank you for attending today.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
And we'll just kind of hang out here if anybody wants to ask or say anything else, or just wants to chat. I think, Don, we have some interesting things maybe to talk about at some point with David about climate change and energy. Sounds like he's doing some very interesting work.
Awesome.
In Kentucky.
Yeah, and I'll note to John, Liz, and Rob that Mike was planning to be here but ran into some technical difficulties. So
okay.
it is such a quiet group.
Mm-hmm. Getting to the end of the year, end of the day.
Every time I try to talk, my dog jumps in and he's licking my face. But I was going to say this was great. And maybe we were just all a little bit shy. I don't really know. But I do teach in New York State. But I said these resources would be really good for me, because even though I'm focused on the Northeast because of the Regents exam, I think it's good to look at other stuff. So I think it'll be beneficial to use in class. And I also said how we're switching to the next generation science standards. I think it'll come in handy then, like when I have to rethink everything. So it's a very valuable resource.
Yeah, thanks. And
Yeah.
we'll be developing the Northeast. Oh, sorry, Don. Yeah, I was just going to say we're developing the Northeast, and so we'll have similar content available for the Northeast by later this year.
Yeah.
Perfect. I did sign up for all of the sessions.
Oh, great.
Oh, great.
Right.
Super. And yeah, please consider, if you haven't done so, signing up for that email, that email list. And once a month or so, we'll just send out some updates about what's been added.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I think you were talking about, Don, something on May 2nd, but I didn't see it. So like in an
Yeah,
email,
that's at
so
the
I may
bottom
have
of the-
missed it.
No, it's at the bottom of the agenda.
Okay.
I still got the agenda link. Nope. So let me just share screen myself, and I can
Okay.
Yeah, and we just finalized this today. So if you go to the agenda and scroll down to the bottom, there's the coming events, and there's Science in the Pub, and below that is the Climate Emotions Matter workshop, and it's split onto the next page. The registration is there.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to that. We're doing that in cooperation with the Climate Mental Health Network, and there's a link to their resources there too.
Perfect.
And since I've got the screen, I'll also note here's the info for Vandana's talk a week from tonight at 7:30.
I think I'm signed up for that one, but I'll double check. So thank you.
Great.
my dogs are getting a little antsy, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna go, but thank you all so much.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks very much for
Have a
attending.
good night.
You too.
Good night to your pooch too. You're welcome, Tyler.
Yeah, that's very cool, Tyler.
Yeah, it's
You know
fantastic.
where you're going to school?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, very nice. Yep.
I have a friend at Morehead State, and trying to remember where Margaret Carter is.
Remember where's Stephen Grab, John? Remember? I think he's at the Kentucky Geological Survey, but they might have their offices at the university. I'm not sure. Stephen Grab is a paleontologist who does a lot of public outreach. Yeah.
Just chime in. Something that I think is really interesting about this that I was just thinking about is, in our area, I mean, with younger kids especially, I mean, one of the biggest draws of geology is our fossils, and there aren't any dinosaur fossils in Kentucky, so it sometimes feels like it's difficult to get younger students engaged with geology. So to have a resource where we can look at the virtual collections and stuff, I think that's really a cool thing, because especially with I mean, in my area, the majority of our history in terms of geology was how it related to coal and the industry that was so instrumental to family survival for all those years. So I like that I can turn to this, and I can use these virtual collections to show kids fossils and things that they're not likely to see otherwise, unless it's like a static, stale image in a book, maybe.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. And so are there I mean, Kentucky's fairly fossil rich, but I guess maybe especially carboniferous plants.
Yeah, they're not the fun fossils,
Yeah,
Which,
right.
I'm from Louisville originally, and I used to go to the Falls of Ohio as a kid, and I loved that. I thought it was amazing.
Right.
But I mean, that's not something that kids in the region that I'm in now have access to. So
Right.
I feel like there's just not really a lot of excitement concerning geology in this region, which is a shame. So I do think the resources like this are really helpful for that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and my experience is that it doesn't have to be a dinosaur fossil for kids to
Yeah.
get excited about it. I mean, there's a site near us called the Penn-Dixie Fossil Park, which is crinoids and trilobites and things like that, and kids love it. Go out and,
Yeah, I think there is something to the whole finding and exploring that sometimes, even if it's not a dinosaur. But I agree, like if you don't have that close enough by for kids to like do hands-on, then that is a challenge, and in many cases that's the case.
Yeah.
But having hopefully it'd be interesting to know if the 3D images will help. Certainly it's better, like you said, than static images. And I wonder, we've talked over the years about the possibility of being able to, ship samples of fossils and that kind of thing, which is certainly doable, but hard to scale up.
Right.
But it's something that we've done on a small scale for fossils of a variety of ages. But yeah, it's very interesting to hear about your work and the idea of helping people transition out of the coal dependency or the coal economy, I guess, because
To me, it's a matter of identity.
Yeah.
I mean, like for centuries, people's identity, specific an identity with the land, and the only identity they had with the land was one of an extractive resource, which, don't get me wrong, it's what made this entire region what it is today. But there's somewhat of a vacuum left now, and I guess my personal goal is to find a way to fill that vacuum with a broad-based kind of, you know, environmental education, you know, for these kids to make their own decisions and just follow the science and to have a new relationship to the land around them and the environment around them that hopefully is more positive. In Southeast Kentucky, we're really starting to transition to more of like an ecotourism or an outdoor recreation model. You know, a lot of the use of the reclaimed strip mines, and so I mean that's definitely a more positive interaction in my eyes.
It's such a beautiful region. So I can see, yeah, it could be, they, you know, could really see it in a different way and with a different kind of value. Huh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you do biological work as well, like biodiversity counts and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I'm a lay individual, you know, I'm just a passionate person, a nature nerd. So I spend as much time recently with people in various fields as possible. I'm a Kentucky Master Naturalist. So every time I see anything through EKU or UK, I just show up and try to like ask as many questions of all the doctors there as I can, you know, and find out everything. So, I mean, we did this week is the Kentucky Native Plant Society's botany blitz. So I got out with iNaturalist and did some of that, and then participated in a couple of in-person things also, stuff like that. But yeah, I enjoy all of that.
That's kind of where I was actually going to mention iNaturalist, but
yeah,
you're already plugged into that, because that's something we've been trying to do more of. But it's, you know, it's been kind of slow, you know, it feels a little technical, so it's been slow going and getting like a large public engagement.
Yeah, I think there's like that initial bump in the learning curve there. You know, it's not difficult once you learn the basics because everything is built off those basics. But I think for some people, like you said, there could be some intimidation there getting past that initial threshold.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, Tyler and David, it's been great to have you on, and so I hope our circles cross again at some point, because I think there are lots of interesting things that we have in common, and maybe Tyler will run across you at a geology conference or should come up and visit us, and we can talk about geology directions. Yeah. Take you into the field.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks all.
All right. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Good night.